A wise man should be able to carry his happiness within himself. Diogenes of Sinope. We're raised to believe that a real man bleeds for love. That a man must win a woman's heart to prove his worth. That the chase is noble. That the longing makes you human. But they never told you that this game, this pursuit, this fantasy was designed to break you. They sold you a lie and you paid for it. With your time, your pride, your soul. Diogenes of Sinope. The man who walked barefoot through the filth of Athens, who slept in a barrel and lit his lantern in broad daylight, claiming to search for an honest man, saw the world differently, while other philosophers wrote volumes on ethics and the heavens. Diogenes spat at convention and pointed his scorn at men enslaved by desire. A wise man, he said, should be able to carry his happiness within himself. But you made your happiness depend on her smile, her attention, her approval, and in doing so you handed over the keys to your self-worth. You chase women not out of love, but out of absence. Think you're running toward affection, but you're just running from yourself. Diogenes would laugh, and he did. He once saw a young man blush in the presence of a beautiful woman and shouted, "Don't be ashamed, the fault is not yours, but nature's for making such creatures." Irresistible to fools, you think your hunger is romantic. Called it pathetic. You think your pursuit makes you strong. He saw it as weakness, cloaked in perfume. Diogenes urinated in public. He masturbated in the marketplace when people gasped in horror. He replied, "If only rubbing my stomach would cure hunger too." Why not because he lacked shame, but because he wanted to expose yours. Your shame is the leash they fasten to your manhood you hide. Your impulse is not to master them, but to appear acceptable to the women you chase. You play the gentleman. Not because it is virtuous, but because it increases your chances of being chosen. You wear masks. Diogenes burned masks. You build pedestals. He smashed them with ridicule. You walk into rooms scanning for beauty. Diogenes walked into rooms scanning for idiots, and more often than not he found them in the faces of men like you, desperate, eager, dressed like peacocks, hoping for scraps of attention. "I threw away my cup," he once said, "when I saw a child drinking from his hands. He stripped his life down to the bone, and you decorate your cage. You chase silk when you haven't even mastered steel, you see." Diogenes wasn't against women, he was against illusions. And there is no illusion more dangerous to a man than the belief that a woman's love will redeem him. He has the most, he said, who is most content with the least. But you are never content. You scroll, you swipe, you wait for a text. Like it's medicine, you sit in rooms surrounded by the ghosts of girls who never loved you, or worse, girls who did, until you gave them everything and the lost interest you were told to pursue to prove yourself. But Diogenes didn't pursue. He stood still and let the truth shame the world. When Alexander, the great ruler of the known earth, found Diogenes sunbathing and asked, "What can I do for you?" Diogenes didn't kneel, he didn't flatter, he didn't pretend to be impressed. He simply said, "Yes, stand out of my sunlight. That is power, that is freedom, that is the man who does not chase but you. You chase women like they are sunlight. You orbit them like planets starved of heat. You shape yourself according to their moods, their words, their whims. Cut pieces of yourself off to fit inside their desires, and then you call it love." But Diogenes would call it slavery, not because women enslave you, but because you walked into the chains yourself. Smiling with a bouquet in hand, he once said, "The most beautiful woman in the world is nothing without character, and character is nothing without truth. And the truth is this: most of what you call love is just your fear of being alone dressed in poetry. Most of what you give is not generosity but negotiation. You hand her your time, your energy, your ambition, in hopes that she will give you back a reflection of your worth that is not love, that is a trade, a transaction dressed in roses. And when the trade fails, when she grows cold, when she stops replying, when she loves you less the more you love her, you are devastated. But not because you lost her, you're devastated because you lost the only mirror that made. You feel like a man. Diogenes needed no mirror he faced. The world as it was, no flattery, no false hope, no perfume on decay. He called out the lies until the world had to either laugh or rage. Because nothing makes people more angry than being forced to see clearly. And so, I ask you, not as a preacher, not as a judge, but as a fellow man, when will you stop chasing what will not save you? When will you stop mistaking obedience for love, sacrifice, for connection, self-erasure, for romance, because the woman you chase is not your enemy, your illusion of her. Is you think it's loyalty, but it's dependency. You call it passion, but it's addiction. You keep telling yourself she's different, that this one sees you, hears you, understands you, but Diogenes said it is the privilege of the gods to want nothing, and of godlike men to want little. So tell me what godlike man whimpers at the silence of a woman, who won't text him back? You were not born to chase, you were not designed to orbit. We're built to build, but somewhere along the line they tricked you into thinking your value comes from being chosen, not from choosing. So now you scroll through apps like a beggar, smile through rejection like a clown, and swallow your pride like it's a vitamin. You call it dating, he would have called it decay. Diogenes walked barefoot in the streets, mocked the rich to their faces, and lived off scraps. Like a wolf among sheep, but even the most powerful man in the world, Alexander, was humbled before him. Why? Because Diogenes had nothing to lose, and the man who has nothing to lose cannot be controlled. But you give her everything before she even asks. You lose sleep when she's indifferent. You change your wardrobe, your tone, your life plans to better align with what she might prefer. You say you're just being romantic, but Diogenes would laugh. He would bark like a dog at your performance and call it what it is: submission, and the truth that hurts the most is this: she doesn't respect it, not because she's cruel, but because instinctively she knows. What? Diogenes knew that anything chased loses value, that what runs after something does not possess. It is possessed by it, and women, conscious or not, are attracted to strength, not sacrifice, to sovereignty, not supplication. Your willingness to please has made you invisible. Your eagerness has turned you into noise. Call it love, but what she sees is desperation, and when she leaves, because eventually she will, not out of malice, but out of boredom or instinct or simple fatigue. You'll feel betrayed, but ask yourself honestly, what did you love? Did you love her? Or did you love who you got to be while next to her? Did you love her spirit? Or did you love the way her presence hid your emptiness? Diogenes would say, I'm looking for a man, not just a male. A man, a soul forged by fire, not flattery. A man who can stand naked under the sky and still feel whole. Not a boy who needs a woman's love to validate his existence. Not a follower in search of a queen, but a sovereign in command of his own being. And maybe that's the part that stings, the realization that all this time, it wasn't her who was the dream. It was the feeling of being wanted. And when that feeling fades, so does your sense of identity. So you go back into the world bruised and confused, looking for another savior in lipstick, another goddess, to kneel to another pair of eyes that make you feel like a man. Because you've never learned to feel like a man without them, and that is the tragedy. You were taught to conquer mountains, but not your own mind, to seek riches, but not wisdom, to attract women, but not question why. And when you finally ask why, when you finally stop and look at your life, you realize it's been spent chasing shadows, women who didn't want you, women who tolerated you, women who only loved the version of you that served them, and you thought that was normal. Diogenes didn't think it was normal. He thought it was pitiful. He once said other dogs bite only their enemies, whereas I bite also my friends in order to save them. So let me bite you now, brother, not to wound you, but to wake you. Stop chasing what runs. Stop offering your soul for scraps. Stop thinking love is earned by lowering yourself. A man who knows his value does not chase. He chooses, he creates, he walks, and if she wants to walk beside him, fine. If not, he keeps walking. That was Diogenes. That can be you, but only if you're willing to unlearn the dream and see the raw, difficult truth. That the man who chases women is not noble, he is not brave, he is not romantic, he is lost, and no woman, no matter how beautiful, will ever lead you back to yourself. You tell yourself it's just part of being a man. The hunger, the pursuit, the ache. You watch movies that glorify the chase. You hear songs that equate longing with love, and somewhere deep inside you believe that suffering for a woman gives your life meaning, that your ability to endure rejection is proof of your passion. But Diogenes would spit at that idea. Literally, he once stood before a statue and begged it for arms. When asked why, he said, I am getting used to being refused. That was his mockery, his rebellion. He turned the world's stupidity into satire. He exposed the absurdity of begging, whether for coins or for a woman's attention. And here you are, a man of the modern age with access to knowledge, tools, and freedom. Unimaginable to Diogenes, and yet you beg. Not for bread, for affection. You call her 10 times after a silent night. You write paragraphs she never answers. You contort your words so you don't come off too strong or too soft. You live in a mental courtroom, defending yourself against imagined accusations, hoping, always hoping to be found worthy in her eyes, and you don't even realize it. But you've become what Diogenes despised most a man. Enslaved by invisible chains, because that's what the chase is. It's not courtship. It's not strength. It's not romance. It's servitude. And you, my brother, are the willing servant, Diogenes said. I know nothing except the fact of my ignorance. He embraced his flaws. He wore them like armor. But you hide. Your flaws like their stains. You sell an edited version of yourself to the women. You chase hoping your performance earns. You intimacy, but real strength doesn't perform. Real strength doesn't adjust to impress real. Strength walks into the world as it is and says take it or leave it. Do you know why Diogenes had nothing yet? Was more powerful than kings? Because he could not be seduced? Not by gold, not by praise, not by beauty. He did not chase because he had nothing to prove. And until you reach that state, until your self-respect is louder than your loneliness, you will always chase what you think will complete you, and you will never be complete. Let me tell you something that no one else will say out loud. She doesn't admire your efforts. She doesn't respect your persistence. She doesn't fall in love with your sacrifice. She might appreciate it. She might enjoy it. But she doesn't feel magnetized by it. Because what draws a woman, what compels her to stay, is not the man who follows her, but the man she can't control. And here's the bitter irony. The moment you stop chasing her is the moment she notices you, not because you're playing games, not because you're being strategic, but because when a man finally finds peace in his own skin, when he no longer needs her to reflect his worth, he becomes rare, he becomes real. Diogenes didn't need that reflection. He walked through the marketplace in broad daylight, holding a lantern, saying, I am looking for a man. Still the world didn't know how to give him one. Because most men then and now are not men. They are roles, they are scripts, they are hollow outlines waiting to be filled by female approval. But the man who stops chasing, he is something else. Entirely he is whole, he is dangerous, because he longer fears being alone, and the man who doesn't fear being alone cannot be manipulated, cannot be bought, cannot be tamed. That is what Diogenes wanted for you: not to hate women, not to deny love, but to stop building your identity around the hope of being loved, to stop outsourcing your confidence to the gaze of a stranger, to stop believing that your highest purpose is to be chosen. When your actual purpose is to choose yourself, you think chasing her makes you worthy of her, but it only proves you were never worthy of yourself. And that's the tragedy. You chase because you believe love will fill you. But real love begins when you stop needing to be filled. When you stop bleeding out your power in hopes that someone will bandage your soul. Diogenes didn't beg for bandages. He walked through life exposed, honest, free, not because it was easy, but because it was real. So, I'll ask you again, when do you stop running because she is not the destination you are? You hear the word love in your heart. Skips, you still want it, even after all the disappointment. All the letdowns, all the unanswered texts and unreciprocated effort. You still want it because deep inside you still believe that somewhere out there is a woman who will make it all make sense, one who will redeem the other's one, who will see you finally as you are and not leave. But Diogenes would glare through you and say, you have become addicted to hope, and hope is the bait they use to tame you. That's what makes the chase so lethal. Not that it fails, but that it gives you just enough to keep you moving. A smile here, eh? Compliment there, a late-night conversation that flirts with intimacy, but delivers nothing, and you bite again and again. It's not because you're weak, but because you were trained to respond to breadcrumbs. Like they were feasts. Every time she gives you just a little, you imagine the whole. You build futures off fragments. You mistake interest for commitment, attention for affection, curiosity for care, and you keep showing up, bringing your best self, your honest self, your loyal self, and leaving with less than you came with. You drain yourself chasing something that was never promised. And you call that effort, you call it devotion, but Diogenes would call it delusion. He once said, I do not possess, so I am not possessed. Understand this, the more you invest in a woman who hasn't earned it, the more she owns. You're not maliciously, not even consciously. But power doesn't need to be intentional. To be real, she controls your thoughts, your moods, your sense of self, simply by being the one. You cannot stop thinking about, and while you dream of her, what dreams die inside. While you refresh her last seen status, what dreams go unseen inside your own soul you give. Your attention to her mystery, her silence, her unpredictability. But when will you turn that attention inward? When will you face the parts of you that made this chase feel like purpose, because chasing her isn't about her, it's about escaping yourself. She is the mirage that lets you avoid the desert within. And that's why it hurts so much when she disappears, because when she's gone, the silence is no longer hers, it's yours. Diogenes didn't run from silence, he lived in it. He filled it with laughter, with truth, with defiance. He barked like a dog, not to entertain, but to expose. He made people uncomfortable, because he wanted to show them how much of their lives were performance, and that's what chasing women is, performance. You become an actor in your own life, and the more you chase, the more disconnected you become from the man beneath the mask. You want her to see you, but you don't even see yourself. You want her to admire you, but you despise yourself. Every time you bend, soften, shrink, hoping she'll stay, and when she leaves, you break, but not because she broke you, because you gave her something fragile and hoped she'd protect it, and she didn't. Not because she's cruel, but because that was never her job. You handed her your self-worth. It's like a glass sculpture and said, please don't drop this. But she was never trained to hold you. She was just passing by, that's what. Diogenes knew the world owes you nothing, not comfort, not clarity, and certainly not love. He lived like a ghost in plain sight. Unimpressed by beauty, unafraid of rejection, unbothered by status. While other men gathered in temples and courtyards to impress women and gain favor, Diogenes was digging in the dirt for simplicity, not because he lacked options, because he had no appetite for illusions. You hunger for illusion. You think if you play the role well enough, long enough, she choose you, but the truth is, the longer you perform, the more she forgets who you are, and one day when she finally turns away, she won't be leaving. She'll be leaving the mask you wore, and you'll stand there hollow, wondering if you ever existed at all. But you did, you do, and that's what Diogenes wants you to see. Not in her eyes, not in her arms, in yourself, in your breath, in your ability to stand alone, without applause, without attention, without the warm blanket of feminine approval, because that is where your freedom begins. There comes. It's a moment in a man's life, maybe after another unanswered message, maybe after watching her laugh in someone else's arms, when the pain becomes too familiar, not sharp, not violent but dull, lingering the ache of realization that you were never in control, that all your effort was a ritual, that you weren't choosing, you were begging to be chosen. Diogenes would have grabbed you by the collar, not to scold you, but to wake you up. He lived among dogs, not because he loved filth, but because dogs don't pretend. A dog doesn't chase what doesn't want to be caught. A dog doesn't build his identity around rejection. Diogenes believed that to live without pretending, that was the height of virtue. And every time you shapeshift to win a woman's affection, you are pretending. Every time you dim your truth to appear acceptable, you are lying, not to her, to yourself. He was once asked what he considered the most beautiful thing in the world. He replied, freedom of speech. And yet here you are, censoring your thoughts, biting your tongue, softening your tone, fearing that if you say what you really think, she'll disappear. That's not love, that's captivity. You fear walking away, you fear silence, you fear rejection. Diogenes feared nothing because he owned nothing, not even the illusion that someone else could define. His worth, you, on the other hand, have built your whole identity like a sculpture made of borrowed parts. Little charm here, a little vulnerability there, a line borrowed from a movie, a gesture copied from a man who once got her attention. But here's the raw truth no one tells you. If she didn't want you when you were silent, she doesn't deserve you when you're singing. You have made your life a stage, and for what a fleeting glance, a promise that changes with the wind. She doesn't even know what she wants, but somehow you've made her the judge, jury, and executioner of your masculinity. Diogenes would have pissed on that altar. He understood something eternal, that the man who doesn't chase is not alone. He is sovereign that the man who walks away is not rejected. He is choosing that to be unseen by her is not. A curse but a test will you see yourself now that she won't you say you miss her. But what you miss is the permission. She gave you to feel worthy, you miss the mirror, not the person. Because if you really loved her, you'd love her even in her absence. If you really loved yourself, you'd never need her to reflect that back. She is not your beginning, and she should not be your end, the beginning. Is the moment you stop running, the moment you sit like Diogenes in the sun and say, I have nothing, I need nothing, I am enough. Not in arrogance, not in bitterness, but in liberation. Let her choose, let her go, let her love someone else. That is not your death, that is your unveiling, the shedding of the false man who thought he had to earn everything with pain. The death of the boy who thought love had to be won through sacrifice. Diogenes didn't sacrifice, he simply refused to kneel. And that, my brother, is the lesson. Do not kneel, not for beauty. It's not for belonging, not for the myth of completion. Stand in your hunger, stand in your solitude, stand in the unbearable clarity of knowing that no woman, no matter how soft her voice, how warm her touch, how deep her gaze, will ever complete a man who hasn't faced himself. She can join you, she can walk beside you, but she cannot rescue you from yourself. That is your burden and your freedom. So burn the script, kill the chase, abandon the altar, let her go, because once you stop chasing, you'll realize you were never chasing her. You were chasing a version of yourself that never needed to chase at all, and that man, he's been waiting for you the whole